I took a solo road trip across the country last year. I'd been driving for days, heading west, mostly staying on one long interstate to make time. Late one night, somewhere in the high desert, it was past midnight and I was exhausted. The highway felt endless, just darkness in every direction and the occasional set of headlights passing like ghosts. My GPS showed the next real town was still far away. I told myself I could push through, but my eyes kept drifting. My hands started feeling heavy on the steering wheel, so when I saw an exit sign that said Motel, next right, I took it. The road off the exit was narrow and uneven. It led to a small, run-down place called the Canyon Ridge Motel. It looked like something that hadn't been updated since the 1980s. A single row of rooms, a flickering neon sign, a cracked parking lot with weeds pushing up through the pavement. Only 2 cars were parked there. I figured it was cheap and I'd be gone by morning. I parked my car and walked into the office. A bell on the counter rang when I pushed the door. An older man stepped out from the back, probably in his 60s. His hair was greasy and thin, and he wore a faded flannel shirt and jeans like he'd been wearing them for years. He introduced himself as Mr. Caldwell. He didn't smile. He just asked for my ID and said he needed payment up front, cash only. When I asked about cards, he said the machine was broken. The price was cheap, so I paid. He handed me an old metal key on a plastic tag. Room 14. As I turned to leave, he muttered something without looking up. Quiet night. The room was near the end of the row, beside room 13. Room 13 was dark. No lights, no sound. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Old cigarettes and damp carpet. The bedding was thin, with stains I didn't want to look at too closely. The TV was ancient. The bathroom tiles were yellowed like they'd been aged in smoke. I tossed my bag onto the chair and texted my sister. Checked in safe. Cheap motel. I'm fine. I showered quickly, changed into sleep clothes, then sat on the edge of the bed scrolling my phone. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small hole in the wall, right above the nightstand, about the size of a pencil eraser. It was in the shared wall between my room and the dark room next door. The wallpaper around it was peeled and torn like someone had jabbed it with a screwdriver. At first I assumed it was just damage. Old buildings have holes, old motels have worse. But I kept staring at it. Curiosity won. I leaned closer and I put my eye up to the hole, expecting to see nothing. Instead, I saw an eye staring back at me. A human eye. Bloodshot. Unblinking. Pressed up close, like it had been waiting for me to look. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe for a second. I stumbled backward and knocked the lamp off the nightstand. It crashed onto the floor. I didn't care. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone. I dialed the number for the front office written on the key tag. It rang and rang. On the 3rd ring, the man answered. Yes? I tried to keep my voice steady. I told him someone was in the room next to mine. I told him I saw someone looking through a hole in the wall. There was a long pause. Then he sighed, like I was annoying him. Room 13 is empty, he said. No one checked in. I swallowed. I told him I wasn't imagining it, that I saw the eye, that I knew what I saw. Another pause. Then he said flatly, "Fine, I'll come look." He hung up. I stayed on the far side of the room, as far from the wall as I could get. Every few seconds I glanced at the hole, expecting to see the eye again. A few minutes later there was a knock. I peered through the peephole. It was Mr. Caldwell, holding a flashlight. I opened the door and pointed at the hole. He didn't react much. He just grunted, stepped close, and shined his light over it. Then he said he'd check the other room. He left. I locked my door and waited. I heard him unlock the room next door. I heard footsteps, a shuffle, a pause, then silence. A minute later, I heard him return. Through the door, his voice was calm. "Empty," he said. "No one's here." I opened the door a crack. I told him again I knew what I saw. I asked if I could check the room myself. He shrugged. Then he handed me the key like it didn't matter. "Go ahead," he said. "Lock it when you're done." He walked back to the office without another word. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped into room 13. It was the same as mine. Same smell. Same stained bedding. Same grimy bathroom. But something felt wrong. The bed looked like it hadn't been cleaned in days, not slept in, just abandoned. No luggage, no personal items, no signs anyone belonged there. I checked the bathroom, the closet, under the bed, nothing. Then I went to the shared wall. The hole was there on this side too, but from room 13 it had tape crudely placed over it, like someone had tried to hide it, except the tape didn't fully cover it. You could still see through if you leaned close. I stood there for a long time, then I backed out, locked the door, and returned to my room. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I pushed a chair against the door, and I covered the hole with tape from my bag. Not perfect, but enough to block it. I kept the lights on for a while. Eventually, I passed out. The next morning, I woke up just after sunrise. I felt off, like my body was awake, but my instincts were screaming. As I packed, I peeled the tape off the wall. I told myself I just wanted to check one last time. That's when I saw them. Scratches in the paint around the hole, faint writing carved into the wall like someone had used a key or nail. Old, layered, multiple messages overlapping. It took my eyes a second to read them, but once I did, my stomach dropped. One message said, "He's listening." Another said, "Don't answer when it knocks back." Another said, "Leave before he copies you." There were also dates, not fresh, older years. Different handwriting, different pressure marks, different people. I took photos. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped my phone. I stared at the wall, thinking about it. This wasn't new. Other people had seen this. Other people had been scared enough to carve warnings. I packed faster, threw everything into my car, and went to check out. Mr. Caldwell was behind the desk with coffee. He looked up slowly like he already knew I was leaving. "Sleep okay?" he asked. His face was blank. I lied. I said yes. I handed him the key and walked away. As I drove back onto the interstate, I couldn't shake the feeling that the motel was still watching me. Hours later, I stopped at a gas station in a larger city and tried to search for the motel online. The Canyon Ridge Motel barely showed up. Just a few listings, a handful of reviews. Most said it was cheap and dirty. Some mentioned strange vibes. One review said, "Felt watched, wouldn't stay alone." That line hit too hard. That night I stayed at a well-lit chain hotel, cameras, front desk staff, other travelers. I posted my story online in a Scary Stories community. I kept details vague, didn't use the real motel name, didn't include the exact location. Comments poured in. Some joked about ghosts. Some said it was a peeping hole. Some told me to call police, but then I got a private message. A woman wrote, "I stayed there a few years ago. Same room number, same hole, same eye. We talked. She said she complained too, and that night she heard knocks on her door. 3 knocks, in a pattern. Too specific, too intentional. She realized it matched the way she had knocked earlier at the front office to get someone's attention, like someone had memorized it and repeated it back. She said she barricaded the door and stayed on the phone with a friend until sunrise. Her message ended with one word, mimicking. That word made me cold because it matched the scratch on the wall. He copies you. Over the next day, I kept searching, digging deeper online. I found more stories buried in random forums, old travel threads, odd reviews, a handful of posts from women traveling alone, not men. always women. Same theme, a hole, a denial. And then strange sounds, people hearing their own words repeated, coughs, footsteps, breathing, like something was behind the walls recording them. One person wrote, "I heard my name whispered through the vent." Another wrote, "Owner acted like it was funny. I searched the owner's name too. Mr. Caldwell wasn't his real name, it was a shortened version. His full name appeared in older records tied to the property." And then I found something worse, a local news article from more than 10 years ago. It said the motel had been investigated after multiple guest complaints, harassment, privacy concerns. No charges were filed, the case was dropped. But a quote from a former employee stood out. "He sleeps in the office. He watches the rooms." That sentence stayed in my head for days, and that should have been enough for me. But it wasn't, because 2 days later on the return portion of my trip, I did something stupid. I stopped there again. I told myself it was for closure. Proof. Something concrete so I could stop thinking about it. I arrived late at night and parked down the road at a truck stop. Then I walked back toward the motel. The parking lot had more cars this time. The neon sign still flickered like a warning. I moved behind the rooms, keeping my phone light low. There was a narrow dirt alley, pipes, vents, old electrical boxes. And then near room 13, I noticed something, a small utility door hidden behind bushes, old, rusty, padlocked. It looked like it led into a service crawl space. I didn't break it, I wasn't gonna be that stupid. Instead, I did something else equally stupid. I walked into the office. Mr. Caldwell looked up immediately. His eyes narrowed like he recognized me. "Back again," he said. His voice was calm, but it didn't sound welcoming. I forced a smile and said I was just passing through. I asked if the same room was available. He said yes. Same cash-only routine, same key, same dead look. I went to the room. I covered the hole with tape again, but this time I left a tiny gap, barely visible. Then I scratched a message on the wall near the other warnings. Not deep, just enough to mark it. Watching back. Then I turned off the lights and waited. I started recording audio on my phone. Around 1 a.m, I heard it. A light scratch on the other side of the wall. Slow, deliberate. Then I heard something that made my body go numb. A whisper. My own voice, repeating something I had said at check-in. Just passing through. It was faint, but clear, like it was coming through the wall itself. I didn't move. I couldn't. Then the knocking started, 2 quick knocks, then 1 slow knock. It matched exactly how I had knocked earlier on the office door. That pattern was mine. It wasn't random, it was copied. I grabbed my keys and ran for the door. I yanked it open. No one was there. The parking lot was empty. No footsteps, no movement. But as I ran past room 13, I saw something. The light was on, and the curtain moved, just slightly, like someone had been watching me run. I sprinted to my car and drove until my hands stopped shaking. I went to the nearest police station and filed a report. I told them everything. The hole, the eye, the messages, the mimicking. The officer took notes, but didn't look surprised. He said old roadside motels get complaints all the time, hard to prove, hard to investigate without a warrant. The next day they called me. They said they checked the motel. Room 13 was empty. They found no obvious hidden doors, but they found the scratches in the wall, including my new one. The owner claimed vandalism, no evidence of recording devices, no proof of spying. They told me unless more complaints came in, it was closed. But I didn't stop thinking about it. Back home, I kept researching. I found a blog post written years ago by a different woman. Same story, same hole, same eye, same voice, repeating her own words. She wrote something that stuck with me. I checked out, feeling like I was losing my mind. She also mentioned rumors about the owner, that he'd lost someone close to him years ago, that he became reclusive, that he acted like terrorizing guests made him feel in control. And the more stories I found, the worse it looked. Women, always alone, always late, always off the highway, always a cheap room, always an empty room next door, always the eye, always the denial, always the copying. It wasn't a haunting, it wasn't paranormal. It felt human, planned, practiced, a sick routine done for years. I gathered what I had, photos, screenshots, messages from victims, links, and I reported it through the proper channels. I don't know if it ever mattered. I never heard back, but months later I searched the motel again. It had been shut down, not for harassment, not for spying, for health violations. The owner was reportedly moved into assisted living in another town. And I wish that gave me comfort, but it doesn't. Because the scariest part isn't that a motel had a hole in the wall. The scariest part is knowing how long it went on. How many warnings were carved into that paint? How many people saw the eye? How many people were told they imagined it? How many people drove away shaking? Now, when I travel, I don't stay at isolated motels on empty exits. I stay where there are cameras, staff, parking lot lights, and other people around. And if I ever see a hole in the wall again, I don't look through it. I leave. If you're enjoying these stories, take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps more than you know, and I appreciate everyone who listens.